Today's guest is someone who's become a trusted voice, educator, and a guiding force for thousands of families navigating one of life's biggest transitions, downsizing and simplifying life with purpose. Joining us today is Kathy Chiero, the founder of Downsize Columbus, a nationally respected speaker, a real estate professional, an educator, and now the author of a brand new book, Live Smaller and Live Better. I have to tell you, I met Kathy at a workshop, I think in either Wichita, Kansas, or in Florida. And when she walked into the room, I thought, that is a lady I will want to know. And that certainly is the case. Her story is one of vision, heart, and leadership. What began as an idea sketched out on a napkin at Panera Bread restaurant grew into one of the most respected downsizing seminar series in the whole country. And certainly so many people would like to be like Kathy, with more than 7,000 attendees over the years seeking guidance, answers, reassurance, and a better path forward for themselves and their families. And when Kathy speaks, people listen, not only because of her expertise and experience, but because people genuinely trust her. She's a force of leadership and of kindness all rolled into one. She brings something that's rare to this industry, which is strength and warmth at the same time. She understands that downsizing is never just about moving, never has been, and never will be. It's about memories, emotions, safety, freedom, family, and ultimately about creating a life that feels lighter, easier, and more joyful. Her philosophy centers around helping people make wise and informed decisions that truly serve their best interests, not just financially, but emotionally and personally as well. So today we're going to talk about what it really means, to live smaller and live better, why simplifying can actually create more freedom and happiness, and what families need to know before they reach a crisis point. Kathy, welcome to Always Ageless. It is my honor and my pleasure to have you here with us today. And I know our audience is going to love hearing everything that you will share with them.
Thank you, Valerie. And what an introduction. I learned about myself while I was listening to you.
Well, that's the idea. That's the idea.
I
No,
appreciate it. Very, very generous, and I thank you for that.
yes, everyone we know together always says, "Oh, I want to be like Kathy." We all do. We all do it. You've gained so much respect, not only in your own local community, but across the country.
Thank
Kathy,
you.
you have built an incredible reputation helping people through one of life's biggest and toughest transitions. And I know I'm going through that with myself, with my mom, and as our family, we just downsized and decluttered and all of those things. But you've been in real estate since 1996, which really isn't
hmm
that long, but it's been a few years for sure. At what point did you realize that selling a house to someone, especially over 55, was a completely different kind of work and that it wasn't just a transition anymore? Now, I do have to interject here that I think over 55 is such a wrong phrase. I mean, what's over
hmm
55? First of all, over 55 is like being a child anymore. But
Yes,
certainly it's the phrase that's used, so we use it. Now,
correct.
we think that that makes somebody old by any means. But what originally drew you to this work?
Well, I grew up in a military family, so I moved my whole life. And so putting everything you own into boxes, putting them on trucks and moving somewhere new was not an event in my life. It meant it was every 3 years. It was a Thursday. In other words, it was what we just did. And so when I became an adult and began to buy and sell my own homes as I moved through life, I really, on a whim, back in 1996, thought to myself, well, I've moved a whole lot. I packed a whole lot. I kind of know what, from the homeowner's perspective, what I'm looking for someone to help me do that. Maybe I'll get my license and, and be on the other side, be on the realtor side of doing that. So
Sure.
really was in 1996, just purely out of curiosity that I went and got my real estate license. And so I began selling real estate in the late 90s. That was pre-internet for at least our
Oh,
industry.
it
So it
was.
was very relational, very knocking on doors, meeting people, open houses, all of that. Old MLS books, those 2 inch
Yes.
thick books with black and white pictures in them. So that's where I
And it's on the
started. But
side for directions, right? It's on
yes,
the side
yeah,
for where to
right.
go.
I remember we had a well-worn, map book we took with
We
us
did,
to
yeah.
learn the rights and lefts of how to get places. So, it was very old school. It's the way we did it. But my mother was an educator, and she was a brilliant woman. She had a doctorate in secondary math, and she was also a grammarian. So I had both my math checked and my mouth checked, all with my language my whole life. So, but she had sort of in my DNA was that education component. So, even early on in my career, I figured out that if I could get 25 people in a room and teach them something, teach them how to buy a house or teach them how to sell a house, that I would have potential clients in my business. And so, really, from the beginning, I was my marketing, seminar marketing was just the foundation of my business. And I got a lot of business holding seminars, meeting people. And then Columbus, Ohio, which is my home, went through an economic recession, as did the whole country, from about 2005 to 2012. And so real estate was hit very, very hard. I used to say I was leading among the functionally unemployed, because we were trying to sell houses in a really, really difficult market. And so at the end of that market, coming around 2012, I really sat down and thought, I bet there's a whole lot of homeowners who have chosen not to sell their home in the last 8 years, but they've gotten older every year. And so I felt there may just be pent up need for downsizing homeowners to sell their homes. So, as you referred to, I was thinking at a Panera one day and wrote down on a napkin, downsize Columbus. I thought, why don't I do one seminar? It was to be one seminar.
Oh,
Let's dive into the challenges of the downsizing homeowner and do one seminar for that group. And what was one seminar has turned out now to be a 15-year journey in learning that group. I myself am in that group. I have downsized myself, I've downsized my parents, and then, of course, hundreds of clients I've helped walk through that. And as you said, I've learned that it's a completely different move from the move up the ladder when you're buying homes. Once you're ready to go back down that ladder to potentially that last home or that before last home, it's a whole different story. And so it's been a real education for myself. And then, of course, sharing that with others.
yes, and I've seen pictures of your seminars that they're held now in convention centers, I think.
Hmm. Well, we have them in very large rooms. COVID really, as with many live events, we were getting 500 to 600 per event. And then when COVID hit, we actually continued our seminars during COVID. We did them virtually. Post COVID, we've been building our numbers back up, but we still get a solid 300 to 400 people twice a year. And remember, we're marketing to one geographic. We're marketing to Columbus, Ohio. And so every year we get a new group who are having to make that downsize decision, and they come to us for help and answers questions. And then, of course, our seminars are staffed and packed with great resources, local resources of people to help them. And and I think that's key, Valerie, is that I think this group, it's rare that anyone listens to this group. I jokingly but seriously say we are not sexy. And what I mean by that, we are not who marketers are throwing their wares at. We are not the group that is most sought after when a new product comes on the market. And so this group often feels invisible. We feel like nobody cares, nobody's speaking to us. In fact, if you talk to the less judicious and younger generations, they would wish we didn't exist, quite frankly. So to have a seminar where all eyes and all ears are on this group. They come, like bees to honey. They are so thrilled that somebody has looked into their needs, heard their needs, and is bringing resources to them to meet those needs.
But we know that everyone's in for a big surprise because we know that there's 10,000 people a day becoming 65, and that by, I
Yes.
think it's 2030 or 2035, I think that there'll be more people over 65 in the United States than there are under 18.
Yes.
And so we need to talk seriously about being always ageless because we are
Mm-hmm.
not going anywhere. And the thing that I've discovered, Kathy, with my mom's situation and our own family, hopefully, is that we don't have a history of dying early. And
Mm-mm.
if in fact people are going to live longer, it's not that there are more of us, but that we are going to live longer and we are going to be a force to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the other thing that I believe has changed, and I don't like the trite sayings that people put where they say, well, 60 is the new 40, but 60, I mean, it is, but it mentally and health wise, this generation is different in that
Very.
they are not slowing down into a lazy boy chair when they hit 65. In fact, many are not. I'm 67 and I don't know anyone in my peer group that wants to retire. And they are busy with jobs, they're busy with their lives, they are thriving in what they're doing. Health concerns come and go. But I'll tell you, here in Central Ohio, Del Webb, who is a big retirement community based in the South for the most part, is bringing their two new communities to Central Ohio. And they are known for sort of the villages of Florida type of environment where every community is situated around a golf course and pickleball and gazebos for nightly concerts and restaurants and all that. And, I went, because that's my group, I went to two open houses for the two new communities, and you couldn't find parking. There were so many people coming to this. And these are people who are saying, yeah, I may or may not retire. I may or may not be retired, but life is not stopping for me. In fact, they're eagerly looking forward to probably what is the best chapters of their life. I call it the Act Three. Act One was being a child, growing up, getting through school. Act Two is getting married, having kids, raising your own kids. Act Three, for many of us, as much as we love our kids, Act Three promises freedom and choice and simplicity of life and the ability to wake up on a Saturday and say, what do I want to do today? And for many of us, we lived for 25, 30 years, 40 years, responsible for somebody else every day we got up. So I look at it and say, I may want to move into Delaware. I might want to play pickleball on a Saturday. I might want to go hiking. I might want to just sit on my lanai, whatever, but the choice is there. And so many of us are looking at this third act as the first time in a long time that we can be who we are, do what we want to do. My husband and I talk about, we'll look at each other mid-afternoon on a Wednesday and say, anybody you want to go to dinner tonight? And we'll start naming some of our friends. Then we'll text our friends, and on short notice, we'll all meet at B-Dubs for dinner. So, you couldn't do that for so many years. So
No.
I look forward with great excitement at those years, and I try to bring that excitement to the people at the seminar and say to them, this is not the end. This is a beginning that you have the ability to create if you do it wisely, if you start taking those steps and do it wisely.
And absolutely so much truth in all of that. And that's one reason why we named this show Always Ageless. I was tired of people asking me how old I was. And what difference does it make? What difference does it make? Some of us were
Mhm.
saying at a conference, at a real estate conference, actually an aging conference a couple weeks ago. Well, no one ever comes and says, "This is my younger sister." They always say, "Are you?" Or they say, "Who's the youngest?" They always say, "Who's the oldest?" Right? Who's the
Right.
oldest between the two of you? And all of this about ageism has just got to change. And the other thing I was thinking about recently is, some of us, and maybe you're a little bit too young for this, but some of us we were the baby boomers, but we were also the kids of the 60s, right? We were the rebels.
Hmm.
We fought for justice, right? We fought
Hmm.
for civil rights. We fought for what we thought women should have the right to do. The first house I sold, very first house I sold, I'll never forget this. The lender wouldn't make a loan to this couple until the lady got a letter from her doctor saying that she would never have any more children.
Hmm.
Only then would they use her income to qualify. So certainly things have changed so much,
Yes.
so much.
Yes.
But let's talk back about your seminars. Let's talk about those. So you started with one room. Did you have sponsors at your first seminars?
I did. In fact, the first time I did it, I sat down and also on that napkin when I wrote the
Yes.
name, I wrote down because I think at that time, let me see, that was 15 years ago. So I was in my early 50s then. I had already begun thinking, okay, what would I want to know? And so I thought, well, logically, I would want to know about the real estate market, about the value of my home. I would want to know how to get rid of stuff because that's a problem. There's legal questions when you're selling that or selling that last house or buying a new one. As far as do you want to put it in a trust? Do you want to, which of your kids do you want to make executive? So there's legal decisions, financial decisions that you don't think about when you're younger, and that is what kind of assets do I use to buy this house or to make the move? And then we began looking at supporting roles. Well, we need to know what kind of housing is out there. So let's talk to some builders. Let's get some movers. Let's get some sorters and organizers. And even 15 years ago, the industry's changed so much where people have kind of jumped into this space. But back then, I'd been in business by then 12 years, maybe 13 years. So
Yeah.
I began calling in favors. I began calling builders. I called auctioneers. I called people, said, look, I got this idea. Can you come set up your table and I'll charge you a little bit of money? And, and they'd say, well, is anybody coming? Well, I don't know, but I'll do my best to get people there. And so it really started just grassroots. Making phone calls and calling in favors and getting people to come. And so that first event, if I remember correctly, Valerie, we had about 16 sponsors, and we had 3 or 4 speakers at that event. And and my background is radio and television, so I knew that if I could advertise strategically on radio, that would be the best way to get a group there. So we began. I put more money than I had on a credit card, and bought advertising, and got a room that held 200 people, and I just hoped 20 people showed up. I had no idea. But we began running radio ads, and in the first 3 to 4 days after the ads began, we had over 200 people sign up.
Oh
So
my.
then, so we had another problem. So I went back to my vendors who had agreed to come. I said, look, good news. We've got 200 people signed up, but we have 2 more weeks of advertising. Could you guys come back again? They said, yes, we filled that event up. I said, okay, could we do it one more time? We did 3 and we filled that event up. And so in that first year, which was 2013, I discovered that was a niche that nobody was doing that. And if I built it, they would come. So we began refining the concept. We began listening to our audience. What is it you want to know? We began filling in those spaces with vendors, resources, people who had those answers. And then we eventually began bringing in keynote speakers, nationally known people who had could draw the platform talking about retirement, getting rid of stuff, um, uh, living health issues, things like that. So we just began improving the event year after year. Now, I've always been proud of it. It's always looks good. People love it. This year in April, we brought in Matt Paxton, who's the former host of the Hoarders TV show and now does Clutter Cleaners. He told me on the way out the door it was one of the best events he had ever spoken at, in terms of the people and collaboration and the planning of it and that sort of thing. So anyway, yeah, we're very proud of it, and we've met great people, and we've learned a lot. We've listened to this group. We've learned what their needs are, and are empathize. I've got 3 appointments tomorrow, all with downsizing homeowners, and they all fill a chapter in my book. One is the reluctant spouse. where she's ready to go, he's not. Another is a woman who's just really emotionally tied to her stuff, and she just thinks she can't get rid of it and sell her 6,000 square foot home. And then the third person I'm uh, working with has health and medical issues and needs to have more advice on what direction they should go and to live. Well, all of those are unique to this
Yes.
age group. A 35-year-old doesn't deal with that, you know? And so as a realtor and as a person who is in this group and is serving this group, it's very important that we have the information and really quality, good people, businesses, resources locally to plug these people in.
But isn't it also important, and you've done such a good job with this, to not just take the role of a realtor because
Yeah.
they don't really need just a realtor. And
No.
the thing, as you have learned, I'm sure we both have learned, is that going into someone's home as I'm here to list your house isn't what people need.
Mm-mm. No, they might call me for that reason. Like they might say, look, could you come meet with me because I need to sell my house. My last son's graduating from college. My daughter's getting married. My husband is retiring, whatever it is. But I learned long ago that if downsizing is a jigsaw puzzle, the sale of the house is an edge piece, meaning that's the easy thing. Yeah, I can sell your house at any time.
Yeah.
The difficult is all the in between pieces,
Mhm.
as far as timing and getting rid of stuff, which can take years. I mean, if unless you hire someone to do it, just clearing a house can take years. And then also there's the whole emotional component that's really hard. The appointment I'm going to tomorrow, the wife has been on board to move into a beautiful new condo for 2 years, and her 74-year-old husband still insists that he can, lay down mulch and clean gutters. So I find myself being a counselor. I find myself being a hand holder. I find myself being a referee. I find myself many times just giving them a logical plan to walk through, and with the hope and the general knowledge that at the end, yeah, I'll have a home to sell. But I tell my colleagues, all of which who think, oh yeah, we want to jump into this space, I say you've got to recognize you got to choose between a quick nickel or a slow dime, because this group is a slow dime. It might take them 2, 3, 4 years to make a decision to sell. Now, when they are ready, they're profitable, they're loyal, they're good customers, but it takes a lot walking them down that path to get to that point. So you have to have a heart for it. You've got to be patient. You've got to have knowledge for it, and you've got to realize you're going to be wearing a lot of hats along the way before your realtor hat gets on at the end of the road.
That is so true. Now, Kathy, I want to ask you because we know that you've told us now that your first seminar ended up being 3 instead of 1. What about the people or the feedback you got from the people about what they were looking for surprised you? And how has that changed now from the from
That's a very good question. I jokingly say often that if these people could still have children, they would name them after us because they are so thrilled to have all of this information in one place. And I think even more than that, as I alluded to earlier, they are thrilled that someone sees them, that someone says that you are valuable. The pain you're feeling, the emotional confusion, the push and pull of what I know I have to do but I don't want to do, all of that is common. We all go through that. So to get in a room where you're being told that this is okay, that you feel this, we all do, I
yeah,
think first of all is such a relief. I think the biggest surprise to me, and now I look back and think I was naive to think this. Remember, I said I grew up in a military family.
yes, you did.
That means my mom kept nothing. My mom threw away things she should have kept, but she threw away things because she knew that that phone was going to ring in 2.5 years and we were moving again. So everything that came into our house, my mom made a decision. Do I want to keep this? Do I need it? Or am I going to throw it out? Because do I want to move it in 3 years? So we lived comfortably, but to this day, I don't, I don't have yearbooks. I don't have a lot of
Oh,
pictures.
so sad.
Anything,
No.
anything my mom thought, I don't want to move this, that got thrown away. So it never occurred to me that people live in the clutter and the
Oh,
functional hoarding, I call it, that now I now see as the norm. So when I started Downsize Columbus,
yeah. So your big surprise, sure.
my big surprise was is that these people had stuff, many people had stuff from floor to ceiling, and in Ohio we have basements, so
Yes,
all
you
the basements were filled up, and if they don't have a basement they could not put their car in their garage because it was full of stuff. So I had to look at that and say, again, being my mother's daughter, well, that's just a practical problem. Get a dumpster out here and throw it all away. Well, now 15 years into it, I'm seeing that that is the number one challenge that this generation has is the emotional attachment they have to their stuff, to the point that many of them will literally die in their home rather than part with their stuff. They'll leave it for their kids to clean up, or the parting with their stuff is so painful and so difficult that it's usually done only by medical crisis or because someone steps in and forces them to do it. That was a huge surprise to me because I'd never lived with that. I didn't know that you could love a dining room table. It just never occurred to me. And so that has been, still is every day, one of my biggest challenges in working with people is getting them to be realistic about tackling the stuff in their home and beginning to get rid of it. Because to convince this group that most of the time it has no monetary value,
it doesn't
that
anymore. No.
most of the time their kids don't want, they might want pieces of it, they don't want all of it. Most of the time it can't even be donated. Goodwill won't take entertainment centers, they won't take old electronics even if they work, they won't take mattresses, they won't take anything. In Ohio, our health code says they can't take anything if it smells like cigarette or has pet hair on it. So even donation sources have gotten picky because donation sources that sell, like Goodwill or the Veterans or Kidney Foundation, if they can't sell it, they don't want it. So
No.
they have learned what they can sell and the rest they turn away. So to really educate this consumer on the fact that most of what they own, take great joy in that you enjoyed it and you got something out of it because that's all it's worth. And in fact, it may cost you more to get rid of it than what it's worth. And that is a real hard truth. And I always say getting rid of stuff is akin to weight loss, and that most people I watch will do everything to get prepared to do it. They'll buy my book, they'll go to seminars, they will do all these, but actually getting them to put something in a truck and throwing it away, they won't do it, or they're waiting for that magic pill that someone else is going to do it. And so that's a big challenge. That's a huge thing in my business that was a surprise to me, and if anything, it's gotten worse over the years.
That's interesting. And now, when most people hear the word downsizing, they think of loss. But your philosophy is, as you're telling us, is that's actually empowering.
It is, and this is not to minimize or do a disservice to the true grief that it comes from leaving a home that you love. I tell the story in my book about leaving the big house that I lived in and taking my three adult children through it to say goodbye to it. And my two boys, who were 6'2", cried. I mean, there's grief attached to leaving a place that you love. But the reason it is so difficult, Valerie, is that with very few exceptions, most of the time when I'm meeting with this group, They don't know where they're going, or where they are going, they perceive to be unpleasant or not as nice as where they are. And sometimes, and I'll be honest, sometimes that's true. If they've lived in there and stayed in their big house until they're 85, and now health or mobility or self-care becomes difficult, and they are required or need to go into 24-hour nursing care, then yes, they're safer. Yes, their family's more at peace, but it may not be as pleasant as staying in their home. But with that exception, I think a lot of people don't realize what's available to them in retirement style housing that was not available even 20 years ago. I say that it's not your grandmother's Oldsmobile. You know, it's not the same thing. It is five-star living facilities. It is player pianos and Starbucks in the lobby. It is craft, classes and woodworking and an indoor swimming pool. And even if you choose just to scale down to a condo, the freedom and simplicity, and I say this because I did it, the freedom and simplicity that comes from living in a space that is just the right size, like Goldilocks, just the right size for what you need. And you wake up on an Ohio morning and there's a snowblower going outside and it's not your job. And you know that in the fall, someone's going to come put mulch out for you and mow your lawn. I mean, there is a freedom and simplicity. There's freedom in knowing you can lock your door and go see your daughter in Georgia for 2 months, or you can lock your door and go on a cruise with a group of friends for, a week. So I think
All those
sometimes
lock, yeah,
people,
we call those here lock and go.
yes, it is. And I think some of us are either we don't see that, we can't see that it's there. The other advice, and you talk about downsizing, the over 55. You know what I always advise people in their 40s and 50s is when your kids are starting to, and I always say it's not at age 18, it's when they get their driver's license, is when they're gone. Once they have their driver's license, I know my kids, I didn't see them from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. So once those signals are there, when your kids are going, that's the time you should start making friends. You should start investing in your own social life. You should start backtracking and asking people to go to lunch. You should start joining a hiking club. You should start doing things, because another factor that I see are 65-year-old men and women who have built their entire lives around their kids and then their grandkids. And they get hurt and isolated when those kids and grandkids have their own life, and mom and dad or grandpa and grandma are not the center of it. And meanwhile, they are isolated and lonely because their own, what I call social capital, has drained. They have not made the friends, they have not stayed active, they have not found a church or a glee club or something that gets out and makes you social. And then they are locked in their home by themselves, and that plays in greatly to not wanting to move, because you, at least the home is familiar. At least the squeaks of the door are familiar. And yet, if you had stayed active and made a group of friends and had that social network, it wouldn't matter where you went. You just pick up the phone and say, hey, do you want to go down to Sharon Woods and go hiking today? What are you guys doing Friday night? You want to meet us here in Ohio in the fall? Do you want to go to the Buckeye game with us? So again, it's that investment in social capital that starts when you're in your 40s or in your 50s that's going to pay off tremendously when you get to that age where your kids are gone.
Or people feel that, so a story I heard last week, Kathy, was someone felt like they needed to move where their kids were, but then they moved there and they had to start all over.
Right,
They didn't have,
right,
their friends were gone, their church wasn't the same church. And not only that,
right.
and their kids had their own lives.
Yes,
Parents went there to be closer to them, but they still have their own lives. And your grandchildren grow up and they
right.
start driving and they don't want to be with grandma and grandpa anymore.
Valerie, it's so interesting you say that. I wrote a blog about this, and I actually interviewed 3 of my clients who had done this, who had moved somewhere to be with their kids. And without one was a total fail. They lasted a year and a half and they came back for all the reasons you just said. that we didn't have friends, we missed our church, where our kids were really busy, all that sort of stuff. But the two that did it right said to me, both independently said to me, that they thought it was the greatest thing they ever did to be able to invest in and be part of their grandkids' lives. But they said, we went for a month at a time and then 2 months at a time to establish our own circle, find a church, find groups that we're part of, so that by the time we moved there, we had established
Exactly.
friendships, we had our own social circle, and the kids and the grandkids were icing on the cake. And the other thing I was told that they did very wisely was, before they moved, they sat down, because you remember they're only the parents of one part of that couple.
Oh, that
And
is
they
another
they
story.
they
Yep,
sat down, they
absolutely.
sat down and said,
Because you
we
are the
want,
in-law to another one.
this is the in-laws, and so we want, and they, that one of them even said they got a book, to ask, and I'm sure Chat GPT could give it to you now, to say, what are the questions you should honestly discuss before you make that decision. And they got it, they ask hard questions like, how close do you want us to live to you? How often would you want to see us? Are you comfortable with us stopping by without asking? All of those things. How often would we have the kids? How often would you? And sometimes that could be bad two ways. This might be they want you to have the grandkids all the time, or part of the time. But it took some really hard discussions, and the two families that I interviewed that did it well said, there were still bumps in the road, but we're so glad we had those discussions, because then we knew the rules. We knew the rules and the
Oh, for sure.
boundaries,
Yep.
and we established a life of our own, and we made it. Once again, Valerie, it's the mindset that this downsize move is just a whole different animal, and it can't be treated as lightly, or as we did when we just bought a house when we were younger. It really takes a lot of more thought and long-term planning, to know what's going to be best for you.
And isn't it even possible that if someone asks those questions of their children, that then they might decide they don't want to move with them?
I had that happen as well. I had a couple who said that's what they're planning on doing. They're moving to Nebraska. And I said to them, I actually sent them a copy of my blog. And I said, look, I'm just telling you, before you get there, that this is what I recommend, only from people who are smarter than me that did it. They changed their mind. They said, Kathy, we are so grateful that we did that, because once we really started talking to our son and daughter-in-law, we realized that not only would it not be healthy, it could be very damaging. And so what they said was, the adult kids said, look, we want to see you more often. So what we would rather do is have you come, and we'll help you pay for an Airbnb for as long as you want to stay. And that would give us proximity. Well, first of all, they said, we live in Nebraska. There's 6 months of the year where we're all inside, that you're not gonna, we're not gonna see you that often. So why don't we take the 3 or 4 months of good weather, and let's have you come out, spend time with the grandkids, and
Right.
enjoy our time, rather than feeling like we're having to step into each other's space year round. And the older parents they weren't hurt by that. They absolutely said, thank God we didn't make that decision. We ourselves felt, yeah, you're absolutely right. We should take this in baby steps, and then see, what happens from there.
Yeah, brilliant. And so they can live in a Del Webb half the year and live in their
Absolutely. They can.
half the year and have an ideal life.
Yeah. Yeah, they can do one. And even had one client who bought a very inexpensive small condo in where her kids lived, and they rent it out as an Airbnb, and then come stay whenever and as long as they want to stay with their kids.
Then
So
it's
it just takes being smart to do that.
It does. It does. Now, let's talk about your book, Kathy. Your book is called A Step-by-Step Guide, but it's also deeply an emotional one. How
Right.
do you balance the practical? Here's how you do it with the emotional, but here's how you might feel. Because so many books in this space get part of it right. They'll give you all the checklists, but not both of them.
Well, first of all, from a very practical, frank, and it's difficult to say, is this is a train coming down the track and it doesn't stop for any of us. In other words, if you had an alternative that you could live safely and healthy and okay in that big 4,000 square foot house with stairs and the laundry in the basement until you were 87, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. So the first thing to recognize is that while it is maybe not something you want to do, we all get to the point in our lives where we realize, again, that train's coming down the track, and how I deal with it, certainly it's my decision. But if I don't deal with it, it will be someone else's decision, a doctor's decision, your adult child's decision. Somebody's going to step in and make the decision for you, number one. And secondly, certainly it's my decision. I think I know the timing, but a medical crisis could change that timing in an instant. And
Mhm.
so what I try to get my age group to realize is your body gives you signs already. I'm 67, but when I go walk my dog 2 miles, my knees hurt. Or when I show houses and I'm still going up and down stairs, I check first to make sure there's a railing. Okay, so your body and your mind start giving you signs that you can't do what you did when you were 40. So we need to listen to those signs, and in a holistic way. And that's what my book is 15 chapters of looking at all the different things to consider to begin to make a decision, not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but to begin thinking about it now in a practical way and dealing with those difficult emotions, dealing with the um, getting rid of stuff that might mean a lot to you, dealing with the fact that you might not handle Thanksgiving dinner in years to come. It's your daughter's turn. Dealing with the fact that you might be living alone for the first time in your life. So those are hard emotional truths. And I would say if we had an option, no, we wouldn't have to deal with them. But we don't have an option. We're all going to hit that point where if we don't make those decisions on our terms and our time, someone else is going to make them for us, and we're going to have very little choice in it.
Yes, and that is a powerful and an honest statement, very
Mhm.
honest. So, how do you help families realize and understand that making this move proactively on their terms is an act of power, not
Well, it's an act of power, Valerie, but it's also an act of love and generosity to the people who love you. So I'll start with the act of power. My dad is today 94, and he lives in a 24-hour nursing facility in Texas. But he got there in an emergency. He had a medical emergency. We had to move him from his apartment. He has 7 kids who love him. Everybody played a part, but literally in 48 hours, he went from this small apartment that he loved into what was essentially a hospital room, which is where he still lives. And we FaceTimed him through his apartment. Dad, do you want this? Do you want this picture? What do you want? And he, by FaceTime, was choosing things. And so when the dust settled, I went to him and I said, Dad, I'm sorry. So I know you want to go back to your apartment, but you can't. And now you're closer to my brother Randy, and Kelly can get to you quicker and all this. I said, what was the hardest part? And he said, the hardest part was having no say in it. He said, I felt like I was dumped here and told what to do and what I could bring with me. And even though we went to as big a lengths, in fact, we took stuff we shouldn't have taken. To this day, it still sits in a shed in San Marcos, Texas, because he wanted it. But again, he lost he lost the opportunity to make those choices. So as hard as it is, what I try to get people to understand is first listen to those signs, listen to the mental lapses. All of us start having mental lapses where we don't remember, or we forget things we've known for years. And so when you get to the point that you are either honest with yourself and knowing it affects your ability to drive safely or be in your home alone safely, often we're, even if we notice that, we start getting told that by our adult children or our doctors, or someone is saying to us, you really need to think about selling that home. So when you start hearing, you need to start listening. And that's when I, again, take baby steps. Start saying, okay, if I move to this house, what are my priorities on where I would leave? Well, I would like to be near my oldest daughter. Okay, then let's start looking where she is and what kind of housing is there. Not with the intent to buy, but begin to walk through some of the available housing to see something that might feel good to you or feel comfortable, or begin to see the good sense in doing that.
Mhm.
If we can do that at an age where we're young enough that we're making these choices ourselves, that's power. That's saying, I'm the one who's going to choose that. I'm the one that's going to decide what goes with me and what gets, thrown or given away. I'm the one that's going to determine the new decor of where I live. I'm going to determine I'm going to make my own home. And we don't want to lose that. That's the power. On the other side, I say, the greatest gift you can give your adult children is an estate in order and an uncluttered home. If you had another 3 hours, I could tell you some of the stories of adult kids who have had marriages destroyed, finances destroyed, relationships with siblings destroyed because their parents left them with a mess to clean up. And it is trying on everyone around you. They don't want to clear up your stuff either. And forcing them to do so, especially in the midst of grief or disagreement with siblings or estrangement in families that comes out of the walls once these kinds of things happen, if you can spare them that, it is the greatest gift you can give them. My husband has a retirement job. He works at a local Costco. One of his best friends in Costco, only 61 years old, died of a heart attack 2 weeks ago. He
Oh,
had no will. He was estranged from brothers. He fortunately had put a beneficiary on his life insurance with Costco. But all that to say that because assuming he didn't think he was going to die, we are 2 weeks in. I am bringing to the table as much expertise as I have to help his niece trying to sort this out. He had brothers he was estranged from that we all knew. Vocally, he was very vocal about not wanting anything to do with them. They came out of the woodwork to get the
oh,
money and the
of
stuff in his apartment and all.
of course.
So a simple will would have put in this in order, but instead his sweet niece has had to hire an attorney. We've had to get restraining orders. We've had to, do all of this stuff. And what will happen, the state of Ohio, very likely, is going to end up awarding his stuff to the very brothers that he did
We
not
didn't
want
want
to
to have.
have it. So again, that's the kind of thing we don't want. We want the power in our hands. We also don't want to leave our loved ones with that mess to clean up, because it can take years, and it's a huge strain on families, relationships, and finances, and we just don't want to do that.
And you have it also where you have a spouse that passes away and leaves
Right,
the other spouse. I never wrote the checks. My husband did
right,
it, or my wife did it, and they're left with all these things, and then the children have to put them in a community that they don't want to
right.
be in, and all the stress that would have been so easy. And we need to tell our audience, Kathy, all it takes is write it on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
You
You know, I
don't have
have
to go to an
I
attorney.
I'm going to show you something. I'm at my desk. This yellow envelope is my going on a trip envelope that I tell my kids, anything happens to me, everything is in this envelope. You know who to call, passwords. I probably shouldn't say that. Passwords, everything's in here. Okay. And so, because I say to them, we don't know what life brings.
We
And
don't.
so the greatest gift you can give your children is to have that planned and sorted out, and make sure they know what your wishes were. Still on my checkoff list and is in my book, I just haven't done it myself, is prepaying for my own funeral and getting that off the table of my kids. So again, those are the kinds of things that not only bring us peace of mind that they're done, but are gifts without a bow. But the best gifts we can give those coming after us is to know they can properly grieve because they're not having to second guess and walk with guilt and take on the burden that they shouldn't have to.
Yep, it happened with one of my clients where they said the best thing to have, our grandma died, and all we had to do is walk over to the mortuary across the street, tell them this is,
Yes.
it was all paid for, it was all taken care of. We could just
Yes.
go ahead and be
It's a
with
great
family
gift. It's a
person.
great gift. My ex-husband died. We had a good relationship after our divorce. He's the father of my kids. And he called me in 3 or 4 years, well, probably not 5 or 6 years ago, said, "Hey, just wanted you to know if anything happens to me, here's the funeral home. I've prepaid. I've done this." I stuck it on my computer, Valerie, didn't even think about it. And then in 2023, he died. And exactly what you said. We went to the funeral home. The guy opened up a notebook and said, "Here's what he wanted," and he paid for it. Pretty much, what day would you like to do this service? And
What a
I
blessing.
thought to myself, yeah, what a blessing that was, that we didn't have to walk through that and figure it out. So, yes, absolutely essential. Those are the kinds of things you don't think about when you're 35,
You don't.
but when you start hitting 65, 70, 75, then we become foolish not to think about them. And no, in our culture, it's not pleasant, and it's not a conversation that anyone wants to have over Thanksgiving, but it is an absolute important conversation we all need to start.
But it's not a morbid conversation. It's a loving
It
conversation,
is. It
and a
is.
great conversation to have when you can laugh about it and tell
Yes.
jokes and say, "Oh yeah, I'll bet you would want this or that," or
Yes.
"Oh yeah,
Like
mom,
my
I
kids,
know you'd want that,"
I
right?
I'm a Diet Coke drinker, and my kids all say how they're going to stuff Diet Cokes in the casket. And I tell them I'm going to get cremated, but they can sprinkle me over the Coke factory if they wish to do that. They can do that. So yeah, we laugh about it, and you should
Absolutely.
make it that, because it is a reality that we all will face, and some of us are closer to facing it than others. So we need to do that.
And we don't get to choose when it's going to happen.
No,
We need to be prepared for it. Kathy, you have built something remarkable with
thank
Downsize
you.
Columbus, and it's much more than downsize, and it's much more than your seminars. And my goal is I would love to come and attend one of them. Hopefully, I can. And now this book. So, where does your mission go from here? What's next for Kathy? And if you were to retire, would this mission go on? What would you like to have happen? What is your legacy with
It's
this?
it's a great question. I did sell my real estate team to another group as of January of this year, and they bought Downsize Columbus from me. But I'm still very much an active realtor and helping them keep it on the track until they're able to do it their own. I kept the rights to everywhere but Columbus to do a downsizing event if I wish to expand it. I'm working with a team right now in Indianapolis to do Downsize Indy, so I might go that direction.
I
I
know who
tell
that
you
is.
what, huh?
I said, I bet you I know who that is.
You probably do. Yeah, they're a great team. I will tell you this. My goal is to get out of the day-to-day of selling real estate. And I'm sort of switching my branding over to more speaking, consulting, and on this kinds of thing. That's one of the reasons for the book, was to really give a platform to start doing some of this, more of a speaking and consulting role with downsizers as opposed to the actual day to day of real estate.
Well, you are a blessing to the older population, whatever that is, and you're a blessing to their families
Thank
in
you.
so many ways, and to your colleagues and the people who are fortunate to be able to be a part of your seminars, because then they can do more through their businesses that they
Yes.
wouldn't know about. They wouldn't have been introduced to this. They wouldn't know how to deal with those people, how to serve them if it
Yeah.
wasn't for Downsize Columbus.
Hmm. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you. And I would say the same to you. Thank you for recognizing this group. Thank you for being a voice for them, because there aren't many, and I appreciate you speaking.
There aren't. Well, I hope our paths will continue to cross. You have to come and do some consulting with me. We'd love to have you here in California. And where else to be in the winter besides Southern California?
So I'll tell you real quick. I know our time's almost up. I went to high school at Moreno Valley High School in
You
Moreno
did.
Valley, California. I sure did. That was one of our moves. Was my dad was at, is it
Sure.
March Air Force Base
Yes.
there? Yeah. Or no, Kirkland's Albuquerque. I lived in Albuquerque also.
Yep.
But
Yep.
yeah, I went to 2 years of high school at Moreno Valley High School.
Well, that
So
area is not anything like it was at that time.
no, I
Grown.
wouldn't recognize it. I'm
No,
sure
you
I
wouldn't.
wouldn't. So
We're a little bit closer to the beach, and you're still always welcome. Thank you,
thank
Kathy
you.
Chiero, for
Thank
all you're
you.
doing for our world and for our older adults, for Downsize Columbus, and we hope you'll come back again.
I would love to. Just ask. Thank you.
Well, thank you.